I was standing in a motel parking lot 2 hours outside of town when my phone started blowing up. 37 missed calls, 62 text messages, most of them from numbers I didn't even recognize. The rain was coming down so hard I could barely see the neon sign flickering across the street. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through the messages. Where are you? The gate is locked. Please, Daddy, please. But the one that made me turn my phone off completely was from my daughter. I hope you're happy. You ruined my life. That's when I knew I'd done it. I'd actually gone through with it. If you've ever been lied to by someone you loved, someone you would have died for, you might feel this one. Before we go any further, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. It matters to me. It really does. Because what I'm about to tell you, I've never told anyone. Not the whole truth anyway. My name is Jeffrey Watson. I'm 73 years old now, but this story happened when I was 58. I was living in Augusta, Georgia, working construction like I'd done my whole adult life. This is about the day I had to choose between my pride and my daughter's wedding. And God forgive me, I chose my pride. Let me take you back to where it all started, because you can't understand what I did without knowing who I was. I grew up in a shotgun house in the poorest part of Augusta. My daddy left when I was 6, and my mama raised 4 of us on a waitress salary and food stamps. I remember being 12 years old, looking at my shoes held together with duct tape, swearing to God that if I ever had children, they'd never know what it felt like to be ashamed of where they came from. I kept that promise. Maybe too well. I started working construction when I was 19, framing houses, pouring concrete, roofing in 100-degree heat. My hands got calloused so thick I couldn't feel hot coffee through the mug. But I was good at it, real good. I showed up on time, worked twice as hard as anyone else, and I learned to save every dollar like it might be my last. By the time I was 35, I'd paid off my mama's house, bought my own small place, and had $47,000 in savings. That's when I met Denise at a church barbecue. She was a teacher, smart as a whip, with a smile that made me forget I had concrete dust in my hair. We got married 6 months later. Our daughter Camille was born when I was 37. The day the nurse put her in my arms, I looked down at that tiny face and made another promise. I promised her she'd have everything I didn't: piano lessons, nice clothes, college money, and a father who'd never leave. I thought I was doing right. Camille grew up comfortable. Not rich, but comfortable. Our house was modest, a 3-bedroom ranch with a little yard. I drove a 10-year-old truck. Denise drove a Honda that I kept running with my own hands. We weren't the family with the biggest house or the newest cars, but we were the family without debt. That mattered to me more than anything. When Camille was 16, Denise got sick. Ovarian cancer. Stage 4 by the time they found it. The medical bills came fast and hard, like punches I couldn't block. Insurance covered some, but not enough. I worked double shifts, weekends, holidays. I held Denise's hand through chemotherapy and watched her beautiful hair fall out in clumps. She died 3 days after Camille's 17th birthday. After the funeral, after everyone went home and the casseroles stopped coming, it was just me and Camille in that house. The silence was so heavy I could barely breathe. I threw myself into work because I didn't know what else to do. And Camille? She threw herself into becoming someone I didn't recognize. I thought it was grief. I thought she'd come back to herself. I was wrong about a lot of things. By the time Camille was 25, I'd managed to rebuild my savings and pay off the medical debt. I was making decent money as a foreman, and I'd gotten smart about investing. Nothing fancy, just mutual funds and a rental property. That's when I saw it, the opportunity that would change everything. The old Riverside Estate. It was a rundown lakeside property on 12 acres, with a massive brick courtyard, a fountain that hadn't worked in 20 years, and a main house that needed everything from new plumbing to a new roof. The price was $340,000, which is about $200,000 less than it should have been because the owner's family wanted it gone fast after he passed. I looked at that property and saw dollar signs. Fix it up over 2-3 years, sell it for $650,000, maybe $700,000. That would be my retirement. That would be Camille's inheritance. I scraped together every dollar I had, got a loan for the rest, and bought it. The day I signed the papers, Camille asked me, "Daddy, why would you buy something so old and broken?" I said, "Baby, everything old ain't trash. Sometimes you just gotta see what it could be." She rolled her eyes and went back to her phone. That should have been my first warning. But I was too busy working 16-hour days, fixing up that property in every spare moment I had, replacing broken pavers in the courtyard, getting the fountain running again, painting the main house. The place was beautiful, sitting right on Lake Thurmond with weeping willows that hung over the water like curtains. I didn't do all this to live there. I did it to flip it, to secure our future. Meanwhile, Camille was living a life I couldn't afford to give her. She'd graduated from community college and gotten a job as an administrative assistant at a law firm. The salary was decent, maybe $38,000 a year, but she was spending like she made $380,000. Designer purse here, expensive brunch there, shopping trips that cost more than my monthly mortgage. "Camille," I said one Sunday after church, "baby, you need to slow down with all this spending. You're not building any savings." She looked at me like I just crawled out of a dumpster. "Daddy, you don't understand. I have to look a certain way for my job. Image is everything." "Image doesn't pay your rent when you lose your job." "I'm not going to lose my job," she snapped. Then she softened a little, probably remembering I was all she had left. "Look, I know you worry, but I'm fine. I have it under control." She didn't have anything under control, but I didn't know how bad it was yet. What I didn't know was that Camille had started hanging around a group of women from the firm who came from real money. Old money. The kind of families that had country club memberships and vacation homes in places I'd never heard of. And my daughter, God bless her, decided she wanted to be one of them so bad she'd lie through her teeth to make it happen. She told them her daddy owned a lakeside estate. That part was technically true. But she made it sound like I was some real estate mogul instead of a construction foreman who'd bought a fixer-upper as an investment. She posted pictures of herself in front of my rental property like she lived there. She borrowed a friend's Mercedes for photos. She name-dropped restaurants she'd been to once on someone else's dime. I didn't find out about any of this until much later. If you've ever had your child lie about who you are because they're ashamed of you, you know the kind of pain I'm talking about. One Friday evening, Camille came by my house. I was in the garage, cleaning my tools, still in my work clothes, covered in sawdust. "Daddy, I have someone I want you to meet." I turned around and there was this young man standing behind her. Tall, good-looking kid, dressed like he was about to give a presentation to the board of directors. Navy suit, shiny shoes, watch that probably cost more than my truck. "Daddy, this is Brandon. Brandon, this is my father." I wiped my hand on my jeans and stuck it out. "Jeffrey Watson, good to meet you, son." Brandon shook my hand with the grip of someone who'd never done a hard day's work in his life. "Mr. Watson, pleasure." We stood there in my garage, me in my dusty work clothes, him looking like a GQ model, and I watched my daughter's eyes dart back and forth between us like she was waiting for something to explode. "Brandon's family owns Prescott Financial," Camille said quickly. "Downtown." I nodded. "That's good. Honest work is good work." Brandon smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Yes, sir. My father started the firm 30 years ago. Built it from the ground up. That's admirable. Actually, my grandfather started it. My father just took over." There it was, that subtle correction. That little reminder that their family had been rich for generations while mine had been scratching dirt. We made small talk for a few more minutes before they left. As they walked to Brandon's BMW, I heard Camille laugh at something he said, high and fake, a laugh I'd never heard from her before. That night, I couldn't sleep. 3 months later, Camille came to me with news. "Daddy, we're engaged." She showed me the ring. Diamonds so big I thought it was fake until the light caught it. That stone probably cost more than my first car. I pulled her into a hug because that's what fathers do. But inside, I felt something cold spreading through my chest. "Congratulations, baby. When's the wedding?" "We're thinking next summer. June. Brandon's parents want to help plan everything." "That's generous of them." She pulled back and I saw something in her eyes. Nervousness, maybe. Yeah, about that. His parents are, well, they're used to a certain kind of wedding. What kind is that? Big. Really big. I nodded slowly. And you want me to? No, she said quickly. No, Daddy, I know you can't afford that. Brandon's parents are paying for most of it. But there's one thing I wanted to ask you about. Here it comes, I thought. The reception. Brandon's parents are paying for the ceremony and the photographer and the flowers and everything else. But the reception venue they want costs $35,000 just for the venue. And I thought, what about the courtyard? I blinked. What about it? At the Riverside property. Daddy, it's beautiful now that you fixed it up. The courtyard alone could hold 200 people easily, and with the lake in the background, it would be perfect. We could save so much money, and honestly, it would be more beautiful than any country club. I thought about it. The courtyard was finished. The fountain worked. The pavers were clean and level. The gardens were maintained by a landscaping company I'd hired to make the property market ready. You want to have your wedding reception at my investment property? Yes, is that okay? What was I supposed to say? No, this was my daughter, my only child, the little girl I'd promised to give everything to. Okay, I said, we can do that. She screamed and hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe. Thank you, Daddy. Thank you. You're the best. I should have asked more questions. I should have set more boundaries. But I didn't know what was coming. I didn't know that in 6 months, I'd be standing in that motel parking lot with my phone turned off, listening to the rain, knowing I'd just destroyed my daughter's wedding day. Planning a wedding is supposed to be a happy time. That's what everybody says, right? Enjoy this time. It goes so fast, people told me. But those first few months of wedding planning felt like watching a car crash in slow motion. Camille came by every week with new updates, new plans, new expenses, and every time I saw her change a little more into someone I didn't know. Daddy, we need to talk about the courtyard setup. I was eating dinner, just a simple meal I'd made myself, spaghetti and garlic bread. She sat across from me with her iPad, swiping through pictures like she was conducting business. We need white garden chairs. The wooden ones you have aren't going to work. I found a rental company that has the exact ones we need. 300 chairs at $15 each. I did the math in my head. $4,500 for chairs people sit in for 3 hours? Daddy, it's my wedding day. I know, baby, I'm just saying, that's a lot of money for chairs. She sighed like I was the most exhausting person on earth. Brandon's parents are paying for the tent and the lighting and the sound system. All I'm asking is for chairs and maybe help with the catering deposit. How much is the catering deposit? $8,000. I put down my fork. Baby, I don't have $12,500 to spend on chairs and catering deposits. Her face went red. But you have that property sitting there. Daddy, do you know how much money you've put into that place? You could get a home equity loan or something. I'm not taking out more debt for wedding decorations. It's not decorations, it's my wedding. We stared at each other across my small kitchen table, and I saw tears forming in her eyes. I thought I was doing right. I was teaching her about financial responsibility, about not living beyond your means. But now I wonder if I was just being stubborn. Was I punishing her for wanting something beautiful? Or was I protecting her from the same trap I'd seen swallow so many people? I couldn't tell anymore. Look, I said softly, what if we compromise? I'll pay for the chairs, $4,500. That's what I can do. But the catering deposit, you and Brandon need to figure that out together. She wiped her eyes. Fine. But she didn't say thank you. She just closed her iPad and left. After she was gone, I sat in my kitchen in silence, looking at the empty chair where my wife used to sit. Denise would have known what to do. She always knew how to talk to Camille, how to make her see reason without making her feel small. I didn't have that gift. The months rolled on, and I barely saw Camille except when she needed something signed or approved for the wedding. Each time, she looked more polished, more expensive, more like the women she was trying to impress. Her hair was always done. Her nails were always perfect. She wore clothes with tags I recognized from commercials during golf tournaments. And every time I saw her, I felt more and more like a relic from a past she was trying to forget. One Saturday in March, about 3 months before the wedding, I was at the Riverside property checking on some landscaping when a car pulled up. A silver Lexus. Out stepped Brandon's mother. I'd only met her once before, at the engagement party. Patricia Prescott. She was in her late 50s, looked like she'd never smiled without it costing her money, and wore more jewelry than most people wear to their own weddings. "Mr. Watson," she said, walking toward me in heels that had no business being on a gravel driveway. "Mrs. Prescott, this is a surprise." She looked around the property with the kind of expression you make when you're trying to hide that you're not impressed. "Camille mentioned this is where they'll be having the reception." "That's right. It's charming." In rich people language, charming means I've seen better, but I'll pretend this is acceptable. "We've put a lot of work into it," I said. "I can see that." She walked toward the courtyard, and I followed. We stood there in silence for a moment, looking at the fountain, the carefully maintained gardens, the lake beyond. "Mr. Watson, I'm going to be direct with you because I believe in honesty." Here we go, I thought. Brandon is our only son. This wedding is very important to our family. Our friends, our business associates, they'll all be attending. I understand. Do you? She turned to look at me. Because I need to make sure this venue can accommodate the expectations of our guests. "Mrs. Prescott, I've worked construction my whole life. I know how to build something solid. This courtyard will hold your guests just fine." "I'm not worried about it collapsing, Mr. Watson. I'm worried about it being appropriate." That word hit me like a slap. Appropriate. Like my best work wasn't good enough for her son's wedding. I felt my jaw tighten. "Ma'am, with all due respect, this property has been appraised at over $600,000. The courtyard alone is Italian marble and custom stonework. Your guests will have one of the most beautiful views in Augusta. If that's not appropriate enough, maybe you should have spoken up 3 months ago when Camille chose this location." She studied me for a long moment. Then she smiled, but it was the kind of smile a snake makes before it strikes. "Of course. I'm sure it will be lovely. I just wanted to see it for myself." She left without saying goodbye. That night, Camille called me. She was crying. "Daddy, what did you say to Brandon's mom?" I didn't say anything except the truth. She called me and said you were hostile and defensive. I wasn't hostile. I just didn't let her talk down to me about my property. "Daddy, these are my future in-laws. Do you know how hard I've worked to make a good impression? Do you know what they think of me?" That sentence stopped me cold. "What do you mean, what they think of you?" She went quiet. "Camille?" "Nothing, forget it." "Baby, what do Brandon's parents think of you?" Another long silence. Then barely a whisper. "They think I'm beneath them." My heart broke into 1,000 pieces right there. "Honey, listen to me. If they think you're beneath them, that says everything about them and nothing about you. You're smart, you're beautiful, you're kind." "I'm not kind, Daddy. I'm fake. I pretend to be someone I'm not every single day because the real me isn't good enough for Brandon's world." "Then why are you marrying him?" "Because I love him." She was crying harder now. "And because I've worked so hard to fit in. I can't go back now. I can't." I wanted to reach through that phone and hold her like I did when she was little, when a scraped knee was the worst thing in her world. "You never have to pretend with me," I said quietly. "I love you exactly as you are." "I know, Daddy. I know you do." But she didn't sound convinced. After we hung up, I sat on my porch until past midnight, watching the stars and trying to understand how my daughter had gotten so lost. When had she started believing she wasn't enough? Was it when her mother died? Was it when I worked all those double shifts and left her alone in that house? Was it something I said, something I did, some failure on my part that made her think she had to become someone else to be loved? I thought I had time to figure it out. Turns out, time had me. 3 weeks before the wedding, I got a call from my buddy Marcus. Marcus was a deacon at my church, worked at the post office, and had known me since we were both 25 years old. He was invited to the wedding because he was family to me, even if we didn't share blood. "Jeff, man, we need to talk." "What's wrong?" "I got my invitation to Camille's wedding, the ceremony invitation." "Yeah? Where's the reception invitation?" I frowned. "It should be in there. Maybe it fell out." "Nah, man, I asked around. A bunch of folks from church, they all got ceremony invitations only. No reception cards." Something cold settled in my stomach. That doesn't make sense. That's what I thought. So I called Camille's number, just to check if it was a mistake. She didn't answer, but her voicemail said for wedding questions to email the planner. And the planner said the reception is intimate family and close friends only. Marcus, you are close family. I know that, you know that, but apparently Camille doesn't. I thanked him and hung up. Then I called Camille. It rang 6 times before she answered, and I could hear music and laughing in the background. Hey, Daddy, can I call you back? I'm at my bachelorette party. This'll be quick. Why didn't Marcus get a reception invitation? The background noise got quieter. She must have stepped away from her friends. Daddy, the reception is really small. We can only accommodate 150 people. The courtyard can hold 300. I know, but Brandon's family has a lot of people they need to invite, and when we added them all up, there just wasn't room for everyone. So you cut out the people from my side? Not all of them, just some of them. Like who? She rattled off names. Marcus, my cousin Teresa, 2 families from church who'd known me for 30 years, the guy who owned the hardware store where I've been buying supplies since 1987. Camille, these people have watched you grow up. I know, Daddy, and I feel terrible, but Brandon's business associates are more important? It's not like that. Then what's it like? She took a breath. When she spoke again, her voice was harder. It's like I'm trying to start a new life with my husband, and sometimes that means making difficult choices about who gets to be part of which moments. I felt like she'd punched me in the stomach. Fine, I said. It's your wedding. I hung up before she could respond. That night, I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all those people, good people, who'd been there for us when Denise was sick, who'd brought food and sat with Camille when I had to work, who'd helped me fix my truck when it broke down and I couldn't afford a mechanic. And they weren't good enough for my daughter's reception. 2 days before the wedding, everything exploded. I was at work framing a house in the July heat when my phone rang. It was Thomas, another friend from church. Jeff, please tell me I'm reading this wrong. Reading what wrong? The reception guest list. It's posted in the bride's room at the church for the rehearsal tomorrow. I'm looking at it right now. Okay, your name's not on it. The hammer slipped from my hand. Say that again. Jeffrey Watson is not on the reception guest list. You're listed for the ceremony, but not the reception. I thought he was joking. I thought it was a mistake. I don't even know what I thought. Thomas, that has to be an error. I own the property where the reception is being held. I know, man. That's why I'm calling you. This can't be right. But it was right. I called Camille. No answer. I called Brandon. Straight to voicemail. I drove to Camille's apartment and knocked on the door for 10 minutes. Nothing. Finally, at 9:47 p.m., she called me back. Daddy, I'm sorry I missed your calls. It's been crazy. Am I invited to your wedding reception? Silence. Camille? Daddy, please don't be upset. Answer the question. It's complicated. Answer the question. I'd never yelled at her like that in her entire life. Even when she was a teenager testing every boundary I set, I never raised my voice like that. She started crying. No, you're not invited to the reception. The world went very still and very quiet. Why? Because she was sobbing now. Because Brandon's family asked who you were, and I told them you were a construction worker, and his mother made this face, this horrible face, and then Stephanie, that's Brandon's sister. She said something about how quaint it was that I came from working class roots, and everybody laughed, and I couldn't take it, Daddy. I couldn't stand there and watch them look down on you. So you uninvited me. I thought it would be easier if you just weren't there. For both of us. Easier, I repeated. Easier for who, Camille? I knew you'd be mad. I'm not mad. I'm heartbroken. Do you understand the difference? She was quiet. I have worked my entire life to give you everything I never had. I buried your mother and kept going because you needed me. I bought that property so you'd have an inheritance. I gave you that courtyard for your wedding even though it meant delaying the sale, and you repay me by cutting me out of your reception because you're ashamed I'm a construction worker? Daddy, I hung up. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. That night I made a decision. I packed a bag, I got in my truck, and I drove 2 hours north to a little motel outside of Greenville, South Carolina. Then I called my estate manager, a woman named Gloria, who handled the bookings and maintenance for the Riverside property. Gloria, it's Jeffrey. Hey, Jeff, everything okay? Big day coming up. Change of plans? The wedding reception is canceled. What? Jeff, it's the day after tomorrow. Lock the gates. Don't let anyone on the property. Not the caterers, not the wedding planner, nobody. Jeff, are you sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I hung up, turned off my phone, and sat on that motel bed, staring at the wall. I didn't cry. I think I was too hurt to cry. I woke up the next morning to silence. No alarm, no construction site waiting, no obligations. Just me in a motel room with peeling wallpaper and a view of an empty parking lot. The rehearsal dinner was that night. I wasn't invited to that either. I turned on my phone just long enough to call my foreman and tell him I needed a few days off. Family emergency, I said. He didn't ask questions. Then I turned it back off before the messages could load. I spent that day driving nowhere, just headed north on back roads, windows down, radio off. Went through little towns I'd never heard of. Stopped at a diner somewhere in North Carolina and ordered coffee and pie from a waitress who called me honey and meant it. For the first time in months, nobody needed anything from me. Nobody was asking me to pay for something, sign something, approve something, or shrink myself to make someone else comfortable. It felt like breathing after being underwater, but it also felt like dying. You ever lose someone while they're still alive? That's what it felt like. My daughter was out there somewhere, probably at her rehearsal dinner, laughing with Brandon's family, and I was a ghost she'd erased from her new life. I thought about Denise, wondered what she would have done. Would she have fought harder? Would she have found the words I couldn't find to make Camille see what she was doing? Or would she have been heartbroken too? That night, I stayed in a different motel, this one near Asheville. I sat on the balcony smoking a cigar I'd been saving for Camille's wedding day, watching the mountains fade into darkness. My phone was still off. I knew what was happening without having to see it. Camille was probably calling. Maybe Brandon too. Maybe even Patricia Prescott, that woman with her appropriate expectations, realizing that the venue she'd looked down on was now locked and unavailable. Let them panic, I thought. Let them feel a fraction of what I felt when I saw my name crossed off that list. But around midnight, sitting there in the dark, I started to question myself. Was I being petty? Was I punishing Camille for something that really wasn't entirely her fault? She was young, she was in love, she was trying to navigate a world she didn't come from. Maybe I should have been the bigger person. Maybe I should have just swallowed my pride and stayed home quietly. Let her have her perfect day without the embarrassment of her construction worker father. Then I remembered something my own father said to me before he left. I was 6 years old, standing on the porch watching him load his car, and he looked at me and said, "Son, sometimes the people who love you will hurt you the worst because you let them get close enough to do it." I didn't understand it then. I understood it now. Camille knew exactly where to cut me to make it hurt the most. She knew that being uninvited from her wedding, from a reception being held on property I owned, using my investment as her backdrop while excluding me from the celebration, she knew that would destroy me. And she did it anyway. That's when I understood. I wasn't being petty. I was drawing a line. I was saying, you can have your wedding, but you can't have my dignity too. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat there watching the stars, thinking about all the moments that led to this one. Every time I'd worked late instead of going to her school play. Every time I'd been too tired to really listen when she tried to tell me about her day. Every time I'd chosen providing over being present. Maybe this was my fault after all. Maybe I'd been so focused on giving her things that I forgot to give her me. The wedding was tomorrow. In about 14 hours, my daughter would walk down the aisle. I'd be invited to that part, the ceremony, the public declaration. But afterwards, when the real celebration happened, when people ate and danced and toasted to the happy couple, I'd be expected to what? Go home? Disappear? No. If she wanted me gone, then I'd be gone, completely. I turned on my phone for just a minute, long enough to see the number of missed calls, 43. Messages, over 100. I opened one text from a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Watson, this is Brandon. Please call me. We need to talk about the reception venue. I deleted it without responding. Then I saw one from Marcus. Brother, whatever you're doing, I'm praying for you. Call if you need me. That one made my eyes water. I turned the phone back off. The next morning was Saturday, the wedding day. I drove further into the mountains, found a little church, and sat in the back pew during their morning service. The pastor was talking about forgiveness, about how holding on to hurt is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to be the kind of man who could forgive and forget, who could show up with a smile and pretend everything was fine, but I wasn't that man. Not today. After the service, I shook the pastor's hand and he asked if I was okay. I must have looked as broken as I felt. I'm working through something, I said. The Lord's always ready when you are, he replied. I drove back toward Augusta, but stopped 30 miles outside the city. Found a park by a lake and sat on a bench, watching families have picnics, kids throw frisbees, couples hold hands, normal people doing normal things. I checked my phone one more time. 3:47 p.m. The wedding ceremony started at 4 p.m. Right now, Camille was probably in her dress. My daughter looking like a princess, about to marry a man whose family thought I wasn't good enough to eat dinner with. I wondered if she was thinking about me at all. I wondered if she regretted what she'd done, or if she was just relieved I wasn't there to embarrass her. At 4:15 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Thomas. Beautiful ceremony. Wish you could have seen her. She looked just like Denise. That's what finally made me cry. Not anger, not betrayal, but the simple fact that I'd missed walking my daughter down the aisle. Not because I wasn't invited. I was invited to that part. But because the hurt was so deep I couldn't make myself drive those last 30 miles. I'd chosen my pride over my daughter's wedding day, and there was no taking that back. I sat in that park until sunset, watching the sky turn orange and pink and purple. Families packed up their picnics and went home. The Frisbee kids got called in for dinner. The couples walked back to their cars, still holding hands. And I sat there alone, knowing that right about now, the ceremony was over. The guests were moving to the reception. They were arriving at my property, my courtyard, my investment, and finding the gates locked. I thought about turning on my phone. I thought about calling Gloria and telling her to open the gates, that I'd changed my mind, that I was being foolish. But I didn't. Instead, I started the truck and drove to a restaurant in Anderson, South Carolina. Sat at the bar and ordered a steak I didn't taste and whiskey I didn't enjoy. The bartender tried to make small talk. You look like you've had a day. You could say that. This want to talk about it? I looked at him, this stranger who'd never meet my daughter or know my story, and I said, I just missed my daughter's wedding. Oh man, I'm sorry. Work? Something like that. He poured me another whiskey on the house. I drank it slowly, thinking about Camille standing outside those locked gates in her beautiful dress with 200 guests watching, probably calling my phone over and over while I sat here 70 miles away. Was I wrong? God help me. I still don't know. All I know is that when you spend your whole life building something, a career, a reputation, a sense of self-worth, and someone you love asks you to pretend it doesn't exist because it embarrasses them, something breaks inside you that you can't just fix with an apology. I paid my tab and drove back to the motel. Tomorrow, I'd have to face what I'd done. But tonight, I just needed to sit with the pain. I woke up Sunday morning to someone pounding on my motel room door. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. Then the pounding came again, harder this time. Jeffrey Watson, I know you're in there. I recognized that voice. Marcus. I opened the door in my undershirt and jeans, squinting against the morning sun. Marcus stood there in his Sunday suit, looking like he'd driven straight from church. How did you find me? Your truck has a GPS tracker for work, remember? I called your foreman, told him it was an emergency. He gave me the coordinates. Marcus pushed past me into the room. Man, what were you thinking? I closed the door and sat on the bed. I was thinking my daughter uninvited me to her wedding reception because she's ashamed of me. So you locked them out? It's my property. Marcus sat in the room's only chair, which creaked under his weight. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. Tell me what happened yesterday, Ralph, I said quietly. He sighed. long and heavy. You really want to know? I need to know. The ceremony was beautiful. Camille looked like an angel. She cried during the vows. So did Brandon. It was real nice, Jeff. And after, everyone got in their cars and drove to the Riverside property. There was a whole caravan, maybe 70, 80 cars. When we got there, the gates were locked with chains and a padlock. I felt something twist in my chest, but kept my face neutral. Keep going. The wedding planner called your property manager, Gloria, and Gloria said the event was canceled per the owner's instructions. The planner started panicking. Brandon's parents were furious. People were standing around in the parking area in their fancy clothes, not knowing what to do. And Camille? Marcus looked at me with something like pity. Jeff, she fell apart. Completely. She was calling your phone over and over, crying so hard she could barely speak. Brandon had to hold her up because she literally couldn't stand. Something inside me cracked hearing that, but I kept my voice steady. What happened then? It started raining. Not a sprinkle, man, a full storm. Thunder, lightning, the whole thing. People were running back to their cars. The tent company showed up and couldn't get in to set up. The caterers left. The DJ left. Everyone just scattered. Thus, where did they end up having the reception? They didn't. Brandon's parents tried to book a hotel ballroom last minute, but everything was booked or too expensive for such short notice. Some people went to a restaurant nearby. Most people just went home. He leaned forward. Jeff, you destroyed your daughter's wedding reception. She destroyed us first when she took my name off that list. I get that. I do. But there were 200 innocent people who drove out there expecting a celebration, and they got locked gates and rain instead. I don't care about them. They're Brandon's family and friends. They're the same people who thought I wasn't good enough to eat with. Not all of them, man. There were people from our church there, people who love you and Camille. They got caught in this too. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot. I'm sorry about that. I really am. But I couldn't, Marcus, I couldn't just let her erase me. That's what she wanted. To have her perfect wedding with her rich in-laws and pretend her daddy didn't exist. I couldn't give her that. So you gave her a public humiliation instead? I spun around. What was I supposed to do? Show up at the ceremony, smile for pictures, then drive home while everyone else celebrated? Wave goodbye like a good little construction worker who knows his place? You were supposed to be the adult. Marcus stood up now too. She's 28 years old, Jeff. She's still figuring out who she is. She made a mistake, a big one, but you're her father. You're supposed to love her through her mistakes, not punish her for them. I do love her. Then why does it feel like you chose revenge over her happiness? That hit me like a punch to the gut. We stood there in that motel room, two old friends who'd known each other for 30 years, and I saw disappointment in Marcus's eyes that made me feel smaller than I'd ever felt. Has she tried to contact you today? I asked quietly. She called me this morning, asking if I knew where you were. She sounded broken. She kept saying it was all her fault, that she'd ruined everything, that she understood why you did it. She said that? Yeah. She also said she never should have taken you off the list, that she'd been trying to be someone she wasn't, and it cost her the only person who ever loved her unconditionally. I had to sit back down. Is she still in Augusta? They were supposed to leave for their honeymoon this morning, Turks and Caicos, but Brandon told me they're postponing it. Camille won't even talk about the trip. She's just sitting in her apartment, refusing to see anyone. I put my head in my hands. What do I do, Marcus? You go home, you call your daughter, and you figure this out like family should. What if she won't talk to me? Then you keep trying until she does. But first, you need to ask yourself something. What? Are you more interested in being right or being her father? After Marcus left, I sat in that room for another hour, just thinking. The truth was complicated and messy and hurt like hell. Yes, Camille had wounded me deeply by removing me from the reception list, but I'd responded by detonating a nuclear bomb on her wedding day. Was I justified? Maybe. Was it the right thing to do? That was a different question. I thought about all the talks I'd had with her over the years about integrity, about standing up for yourself, about not letting people treat you less than you're worth. Apparently, she'd been listening. The problem was she'd applied those lessons in the worst possible way, trying to fit into a world that didn't value her father's worth, and I'd applied them by burning down her wedding. We were both trying to protect our dignity. We'd both lost it in the process. I packed my bag, checked out of the motel, and started the drive back to Augusta. My phone was still off. I wasn't ready for the hundreds of messages waiting for me. I needed to think about what I was going to say to Camille when I finally saw her. Sorry didn't feel like enough, but it was all I had. I drove past the Riverside property on my way home, almost out of habit. The gates were still locked. There were tire tracks in the mud from all the cars that had turned around yesterday. A piece of white fabric, maybe from someone's dress, was caught on the fence, fluttering in the wind like a surrender flag. I pulled over and just looked at it for a while. This place was supposed to be my retirement, my security, my gift to Camille when I died. Instead, it had become the grave marker for our relationship. When I got home, my house felt different, colder somehow. I walked through the rooms Camille had grown up in, the living room where she'd done homework at the coffee table, the kitchen where we'd had breakfast together every Saturday for 18 years, the hallway where I'd measured her height on the wall every birthday until she turned 16 and said she was too old for that. On the mantel was a picture from her high school graduation, me, Camille, and Denise, all smiling, all together. I picked it up and stared at it. That Jeffrey Watson would have never locked his daughter out of her wedding reception. He would have swallowed his pride, shown up, smiled through the pain, and loved her anyway. But that Jeffrey Watson still had his wife. He had a partner to help him navigate the hard moments. He wasn't alone, trying to figure out how to be both mother and father to a grieving daughter who'd lost her way. When had I become this person? This angry, hurt man who punished instead of forgave? I didn't recognize myself anymore. I picked up my phone and turned it on. The messages loaded like an avalanche. I didn't read them, didn't listen to the voicemails, just scrolled until I found Camille's number and pressed call. It rang once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th ring, she answered. Daddy? Her voice was so small, so broken that I almost couldn't speak. Baby, I'm home. Silence. Then I'm so sorry. I know. I was wrong. I was so wrong. I know that too. Can I? She was crying now. Can I come over? Please. 20 minutes later, there was a knock on my door. I opened it, and there stood my daughter, still in sweatpants and one of her mother's old sweaters that she must have kept all these years. Her face was puffy from crying. Her hair was in a messy bun. She looked about 12 years old. Hi, Daddy. Hi, baby. We stood there looking at each other, and I saw every year of her life flash before me. The baby I'd held in the hospital, the toddler who'd called me Dada and wanted me to read the same book every single night, the teenager who'd slammed doors and rolled her eyes but still came to me when boys broke her heart, the young woman who'd buried her mother and tried to be strong when she was falling apart, and the bride who'd been so desperate to fit in somewhere that she'd forgotten where she came from. I don't know how to fix this, she whispered. Me neither. Do you hate me? That question broke something in me that I didn't know could still break. I pulled her into my arms and held her while she cried, really cried, the way she hadn't since her mother died. I could never hate you, I said into her hair. Not in a million years. Not if you tried. We stood there in my doorway, father and daughter, 2 broken people who'd hurt each other in the worst ways, and we didn't have answers. But we had each other, and for now, that was enough. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where we'd had 1,000 meals, 1,000 conversations. But this one felt different, heavier, like the words we chose would either build a bridge or burn it forever. I made coffee, mostly to have something to do with my hands. Camille sat there, tearing a napkin into smaller and smaller pieces, not looking at me. Where's Brandon? I asked. At his parents'. We had a fight this morning. About what? About everything. About you. About the wedding. About, she took a shaky breath, about who I've become. I set the coffee cups down and sat across from her. Talk to me, baby. Help me understand. She was quiet for a long time. Then, do you remember when Mom got sick? Every second of it. I was 16. All my friends were worried about prom dresses and college applications, and I was worried about whether my mom would live to see me graduate high school. I know it was hard on you. No, Daddy, let me finish. She looked up at me, and her eyes were so much like Denise's it hurt. After she died, I felt like I disappeared too. Like I'd been Camille Watson, daughter of Jeffrey and Denise, and suddenly I was just nothing. You threw yourself into work, which I get, you had to. But I was alone in that house trying to figure out who I was without Mom. I felt guilt settle over me like a weight. When I started at the law firm, she continued, I met these women who seemed to have everything figured out. Perfect clothes, perfect lives, perfect families. And I wanted that so bad. I wanted to feel whole again. So I started pretending. A little bit at first, just exaggerating, then bigger lies, until I built this entire fake life. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were dealing with your own grief, and because, she wiped her eyes, because part of me was ashamed of you, and I'm so sorry, Daddy, but it's true. I was ashamed that you worked with your hands, that you drove an old truck, that you didn't fit into the world I was trying to join. That hurt more than the wedding day, hearing her say it out loud, but I needed to hear it. Keep going. When I met Brandon, I thought I'd finally made it. He was from this perfect family with money and connections, and he loved me. Or at least, he loved the version of me I showed him. I kept up the act so long that I forgot it was an act. And by the time I realized I'd backed myself into a corner, it was too late to tell the truth. So when his mother asked about me, I panicked. I told her you were in real estate, which is technically true. But I made it sound like you developed properties instead of flipping one house. And when she wanted to meet you, I kept making excuses. Then she saw you that day in the garage, and I saw her expression change. I knew she'd figured it out. That I'm just a construction worker. You're not just anything, Daddy. She slammed her hand on the table. That's the whole point. You're brilliant with your hands. You can build anything. You turned that Riverside property from a dump into something beautiful. You paid off Mom's medical bills and still managed to save for my future. You're incredible. But I was so worried about what they thought that I couldn't see it. So you took me off the guest list. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Brandon's sister made a joke at the rehearsal dinner planning meeting. She said something about how we should have a blue-collar cocktail at the reception, served in hard hats. Everyone laughed except Brandon. He told her it wasn't funny, but she said, "Oh, come on, it's sweet that Camille's father works construction. Very authentic." I felt my jaw tighten. I sat there and let them laugh, Daddy. I didn't defend you. I just smiled and changed the subject. Then later, Patricia pulled me aside and said, "Darling, I hope you understand. The reception is for our circle. Perhaps your father would be more comfortable at just the ceremony." And you agreed. I told myself I was protecting you from their judgment. But really, I was protecting myself from being exposed as a fraud. She looked at me with such pain in her eyes. I became exactly the kind of person I hate, the kind who looks down on people based on their job or their bank account. I became Patricia. We sat in silence for a moment. "What did you and Brandon fight about this morning?" I asked. He said I needed to choose, his family or you. My blood went cold. "What did you say?" I said if he's asking me to choose, then I already know who he really is, and it's not the man I thought I was marrying. "Camille, he said you ruined our wedding out of spite, that you embarrassed his family, that you're controlling and manipulative. He said a real father would have just accepted not being at the reception. What do you think?" She looked down at her shredded napkin. "I think you did something terrible for the right reasons, and I did something terrible for the wrong ones. That's a fair assessment. I called off the honeymoon. I don't know if I can marry someone whose mother thinks my father isn't good enough to eat at the same table with them, and whose sister makes jokes at his expense, and who," her voice cracked, "and who didn't stand up for you the way you've always stood up for me." Hold on. Are you saying you're calling off the wedding? I don't know. Maybe. I love Brandon, but I'm not sure love is enough when his whole family treats my family like we're beneath them. I reached across the table and took her hand. "Baby, don't make any big decisions right now. You're hurt and angry and confused. Give it a few days. Talk to Brandon when you've both calmed down." Did you calm down before you locked the gates? That stopped me. No, I admitted. I didn't. I reacted from a place of hurt, and I regret how I handled it. I should have talked to you first. I should have told you how much you'd wounded me instead of just destroying everything. So we're both terrible at communication. Seems that way. She squeezed my hand. Daddy, I need you to understand something. What I did to you was unforgivable. I know that. But what you did, she took a breath. What you did showed me that you won't let anyone treat you as less than you are. Not even me. And as much as it hurt, as much as I was humiliated standing outside those gates, part of me was proud of you. Proud? Yeah, because you drew a line. You said this far and no further. I've spent 2 years letting people cross every line I had trying to fit in, and you showed me what it looks like to have boundaries, even when it costs you everything. I didn't know what to say to that. We drank our coffee in silence for a while. Outside, I could hear a neighbor mowing their lawn. Normal sounds of a normal Sunday, but nothing felt normal anymore. What happens now? I asked. I don't know. I need to figure out if Brandon and I can survive this. If his family will ever respect me knowing they can't push my father around. If I can even respect myself after what I've done. And us? She looked at me with those eyes that had looked up at me from a crib 28 years ago. I want us to be okay. I need us to be okay. You're all I have left of Mom, and I almost lost you because I was too stupid to see what matters. You're not stupid, you're human. We all mess up. Not like this. Exactly like this. Everyone's got a story about the time they chose the wrong thing for the wrong reason and it blew up in their face. This is yours. The question is what you do with it now. She nodded slowly. I think I need to talk to Patricia. Brandon's mother? Yeah, I need to tell her the truth. About who I really am, where I really come from, about you and Mom, and how hard we worked. And if she can't respect that, then I can't marry into that family. That's a brave choice. It's the only choice. I can't spend the rest of my life pretending to be someone I'm not. It'll kill me. It already almost did. I stood up and pulled her into a hug. She felt so small in my arms, like she did when she was little and would climb into my lap after a nightmare. I'm proud of you, I whispered. Even after everything? Especially after everything. It takes strength to admit you're wrong. It takes more strength to do something about it. We held each other for a long time. Two people who'd been through hell trying to find their way back home. When she finally pulled away, she said, Daddy, I have to ask you something. Anything. Why did you really lock those gates? Was it just about being uninvited, or was it something more? I thought about it carefully. She deserved the truth. It was everything, I said finally. It was watching you change into someone I didn't recognize. It was seeing you value material things over real things. It was Patricia Prescott looking at my property like it wasn't good enough when I'd worked myself half to death to afford it. It was knowing that to Brandon's family, I would always be the construction worker, said with pity or condescension or amusement. But mostly, I looked her in the eye. It was realizing that my own daughter had learned to be ashamed of where she came from, and I wouldn't enable that. She nodded slowly. I get it now. You weren't punishing me. You were trying to save me. I don't know if I'd call it that, but I knew if I just accepted being excluded, I'd be teaching you that it's okay to treat people differently based on their social class, that it's okay to be ashamed of honest work, that it's okay to pretend to be something you're not just to fit in. And I couldn't do that, not even for you. It was still cruel. It was. And I'm sorry for that. There were 100 better ways I could have handled it. Like talking to me? Like talking to you. She smiled sadly. We're a mess, aren't we? The biggest mess I know. Can we fix it? I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw not the bride who'd excluded me, or the woman who'd been ashamed of me, but the little girl who used to bring me dandelions from the yard like they were roses, the teenager who'd held my hand at her mother's funeral, the young woman who was brave enough to admit her mistakes and strong enough to try to change. Yeah, baby, I said. I think we can. 3 days after the wedding, Camille asked if I'd go with her to meet Patricia Prescott. You sure you want me there? I asked. I need you there. This isn't about her approving of you, Daddy. This is about me standing up for us, for our family. But I need you beside me when I do it. We met Patricia at her country club, because of course we did. The Oak Ridge Club had white columns, a valet, and a dress code stricter than most courtrooms. I put on my only suit, the one I'd worn to Denise's funeral and hadn't touched since. It still fit, barely. Camille wore a simple black dress and no makeup except a little mascara. She looked more like herself than she had in years. Patricia was waiting at a corner table, wearing pearls and judgment in equal measure. She stood when she saw us, and I watched her eyes do a quick scan of my suit, probably calculating its cost down to the dollar. Camille? Mr. Watson? Her voice could have frozen water. Thank you for coming. We sat. A waiter appeared immediately. They always do in places like this. And Patricia ordered sparkling water without asking what we wanted. I ordered coffee. Camille asked for nothing. I assume this is about the unfortunate incident at the weekend, Patricia said after the waiter left. You mean my wedding reception being locked out? Camille said, her voice steady. Yes. Quite embarrassing for everyone involved. Mrs. Prescott, I said, before Camille could respond, let's be clear about something. I locked those gates because I was uninvited to a reception being held on property I own, property I purchased with money I earned working construction for 40 years. Patricia's expression didn't change. I understand you were upset. I wasn't upset. I was disrespected by your family and by my own daughter. And I chose to draw a boundary. A boundary? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Mr. Watson, you humiliated over 200 guests, including business associates, judges, and prominent members of this community. That wasn't a boundary. It was revenge. Maybe it was both. Camille put her hand on mine. Mrs. Prescott, I asked to meet with you because there are some things I need to say, things I should have said a long time ago. Patricia took a sip of her water, waiting. I've been lying to you, to Brandon, to everyone. I'm not from a wealthy family. My father doesn't develop properties. He works construction, and he bought one investment property that he's been fixing up himself. We're not country club people. We're church potluck people. We're work hard, save your money, help your neighbors people. I watched Patricia's face remain perfectly neutral, which somehow felt worse than if she'd reacted. Camille continued. My mother was a public school teacher. She died of cancer when I was 17, and we had to sell her car to help pay the medical bills. My father worked 3 jobs to pay off the debt and still managed to save enough to buy that lakeside property. Everything I told you about my background was designed to make you think I was one of you. But I'm not, and I'm done pretending to be. I see, Patricia said slowly. And you're telling me this now because I'm not sure I can marry Brandon if his family can't respect where I come from. For the first time, I saw a crack in Patricia's composure. You're considering calling off the wedding? I'm considering whether I want to spend the rest of my life being embarrassed of my father, and the answer is no. The waiter brought my coffee. I took a sip and let Camille keep talking. You suggested my father might be more comfortable at just the ceremony. You weren't thinking about his comfort. You were protecting your own image. You didn't want your friends and business associates to know your new daughter-in-law's father shows up to work in a hard hat. That's not entirely fair. It's completely fair. Your daughter made a joke about blue-collar cocktails and hard hats. You laughed. Brandon told her to stop, but you laughed. Patricia had the decency to look away. My father taught me everything I know about integrity, Camille said, about keeping your word, working hard, and treating people with dignity regardless of their bank account. But somewhere along the way, I forgot those lessons. I got so caught up in trying to fit into your world that I lost sight of my own worth, and his. Camille, dear, I'm not finished. Camille's voice got stronger. You need to understand something. My father locked those gates because I broke his heart. Not because he's petty or controlling, but because he spent his entire life teaching me to value character over status. And I threw it all away to impress people who judge others based on what they do for a living. I squeezed her hand under the table. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, What exactly do you want from me? I want to know if you can respect my father, not tolerate him, not pity him, but actually respect him. Because if you can't, then I don't belong in your family. That's quite an ultimatum. It's not an ultimatum. It's a boundary. I almost smiled. Patricia looked at me then, really looked at me, maybe for the first time since we'd met. Mr. Watson, I owe you an apology. I wasn't expecting that. I made assumptions about you based on your profession. That was wrong. I also participated in excluding you from the reception, which was... She paused. Cruel. I told myself it was about managing expectations and maintaining a certain level of appropriateness. But the truth is, I was worried about what my friends would think. And what have you learned? I asked. That I raised my son better than I behaved. Brandon defended you multiple times, Mr. Watson. He told his sister her joke was inappropriate. He told me you deserved to be at the reception. He was the only one in our family who saw clearly, and I'm ashamed that I didn't listen to him. Camille looked surprised. Brandon said all that? He did. In fact, he's been quite upset with all of us since Saturday. He said if you called off the wedding, he'd understand completely, and that frankly, we'd deserve it. I felt something shift in how I saw Brandon. Maybe the kid had more spine than I'd given him credit for. Mrs. Prescott, I said, I don't need you to like me, but if you're going to be family with my daughter, I need you to respect that she comes from somewhere, and that somewhere includes me, my work, my values, and my choices. Can you do that? She looked at me for a long time. Then she nodded. I can try. That's the most honest answer I can give you. Trying is enough, I said. For now. Patricia turned to Camille. Do you still want to marry Brandon? I don't know yet. I need to talk to him first. Really talk about all of this. He's waiting at our house if you're ready. Camille looked at me. I nodded. Okay, she said. Let's go. We left the country club together, and I felt lighter than I had in months. Not because everything was fixed, it wasn't, but because my daughter had found her voice again, and she'd used it to defend us both. That meant more than any wedding ever could. Brandon and Patricia's house was exactly what I expected. A colonial-style mansion in the oldest, wealthiest neighborhood in Augusta. Columns, circular driveway, the works. But when we walked in, I was struck by how empty it felt. All that space, all that money, and it felt like nobody actually lived there. Brandon was in the living room, standing by the window. When he saw Camille, his whole face changed. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Camille, he started toward her, then stopped. I wasn't sure you'd come. Patricia excused herself, giving us privacy. I started to leave too, but Camille grabbed my arm. Stay, Daddy, please. So I sat on the couch while they stood facing each other like two people trying to cross a canyon. Your mom told me what you said to your sister, Camille began, about her joke being inappropriate. Brandon ran his hand through his hair. That joke was disgusting. I told her so. She said I was being too sensitive. Why didn't you tell me you defended my dad? Because I didn't think I needed to. Camille, I thought we were on the same page about this. When you told me your father couldn't be at the reception, I thought it was a mutual decision based on space constraints, not because you were. He stopped himself. Not because I was what? Ashamed, he said quietly. My mother told me this morning that you'd been lying about your background, that your father works construction, that you grew up middle class, that everything you told us was a lie, Camille finished. It was all a lie. Brandon looked at me for the first time since we'd entered. Mr. Watson, I owe you an enormous apology. I had no idea you were uninvited. My mother told me you'd chosen not to attend the reception because you had other obligations. If I'd known the truth, I would have... You would have what? I asked. I would have put your name back on the list. I would have insisted on it. You're her father. You should have been there. Camille wiped her eyes. Why didn't you ask more questions? Why didn't you wonder why my dad wasn't coming to the reception? Because my mother handles all the logistics for these things. And He sat down heavily on a chair. I trusted her. I shouldn't have. I should have paid more attention. But I was so focused on the business merger happening the same week as the wedding and the contracts, and I failed you. Both of you. I studied this young man carefully. He looked genuinely remorseful. But remorse after the fact doesn't undo the damage. Brandon, I said, can I ask you something? Yes, sir. Do you know what your sister does for a living? He blinked. She's in marketing. And your father? He runs the family business. And your mother? She manages the household and sits on several charity boards. Right. So none of them have ever done manual labor. None of them have ever worried about making rent or paying medical bills or choosing between fixing the car and buying groceries. No, sir. That's not a criticism. That's just a fact. But it means they don't understand people like me. People who work with their hands. People who save for years to afford what they can buy in an afternoon. And if you marry my daughter, you need to understand that divide. I do understand. No, you don't. I leaned forward. If you understood, you would have noticed when she started lying about who she was. You would have seen her changing into someone unrecognizable. You would have asked why she was spending money she didn't have to impress people she didn't know. A man who truly knew my daughter would have seen all that and said, "Baby, what's going on?" Brandon's face went pale. Camille spoke up. "Daddy's right. You fell in love with a version of me that didn't exist. You don't actually know the real me." "Then let me," Brandon said desperately. "Let me know the real you. Camille, I don't care about any of this. The lies, the background, none of it matters." "It should matter," she said. "The fact that I lied for 2 years should matter to you." "Why did you lie?" "Because I didn't think the real me was good enough for you." He stood and crossed to her, taking her hands. "You were always good enough. From the first moment I met you at that deposition, arguing circles around our senior partner, I knew you were special. Not because of where you came from or what your father did, because of who you are. But you never asked about my family. In 2 years you met my dad twice. You never asked to see where I grew up or meet my friends from school or come to my church. You never invited me. Because I was ashamed. And you never pushed to be included. You were fine keeping that part of my life separate." They stood there, both realizing the same thing at the same time. They'd built a relationship on a foundation of omissions and assumptions. "Can we fix this?" Brandon asked. "I don't know," Camille said honestly. "I don't know if I can marry into a family that judges people based on their bank accounts. And I don't know if you can handle being married to someone whose father shows up in work boots instead of Italian shoes. I can handle anything as long as it's with you." "That's what you say now. But what about the next family dinner when your sister makes another joke? What about the next business event when you have to introduce me and explain that my background isn't what people think? Then I'll tell them the truth, that my wife comes from a family of hard workers who value integrity over image. And if that's not good enough for them, they're not good enough for us." I saw something in Camille's expression shift slightly. Hope, maybe, or at least the beginning of it. "Brandon," I said, "let me give you some advice, father to future son-in-law, if that's still what you want to be." "I'm listening, sir." "Your family has money. That's neither good nor bad. It just is. But money insulates you from reality in ways you don't even realize. You've never had to choose between dignity and survival. You've never had to swallow your pride to feed your family. And because of that, you don't see the 1,000 tiny ways your family makes people like me feel small." "Tell me how," he said. "I want to understand." "The way your mother looked at my suit today, calculating what I could afford. The way your sister's joke reduced my entire life's work to a punchline. The way you all assumed it was fine to exclude me from my own daughter's wedding because it might make your business associates uncomfortable. These aren't malicious acts. They're unconscious ones, which makes them harder to fight." Brandon nodded slowly. "What do I do?" "You start paying attention. You call it out when you see it. You stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves in that world. And most importantly," I looked at Camille, "you make sure my daughter never feels like she has to hide who she is to be loved by you." "I promise," he said. "Mr. Watson, I swear to you, I'll spend the rest of my life making sure she knows she's enough, exactly as she is." Camille was crying now. "I need time, Brandon. I need to figure out who I am separate from all these lies I've told. I need to rebuild my relationship with my dad. I need to understand if I can really be myself in your world without losing myself again." "How much time?" "I don't know. Maybe a lot. Can I wait for you?" "You might be waiting a long time. Then I'll wait a long time." They held each other, and I looked away to give them privacy. When I looked back, Camille was whispering something to him I couldn't hear. He nodded, kissed her forehead, and stepped back. She turned to me. "Ready to go home, Daddy?" Yeah, baby, let's go home. As we walked to my truck, Brandon called out, Mr. Watson? I turned. Thank you for locking those gates. I know that sounds crazy, but it woke us all up. It showed us who we'd become. So thank you. I nodded once and got in the truck. On the drive home, Camille was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Do you think I should marry him? I think you should marry someone who knows you, the real you, and right now I'm not sure he does. But he wants to. Wanting to know someone and doing the work to know them are different things. She nodded, staring out the window. Daddy, can I stay with you for a while? I don't want to be alone right now. You can stay as long as you need, even if it's months, even if it's years. She reached over and squeezed my hand, and for the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like I had my daughter back. Camille moved back into her old bedroom the next day. It still had the same lavender walls she'd insisted on when she was 14, the same bookshelf full of YA novels she'd outgrown, the same corkboard with photos of friends from high school. She stood in the doorway looking at it all like she was seeing a museum of someone else's life. It feels smaller than I remember, she said. Everything does when you grow up. She started bringing boxes over throughout the week. Clothes, books, her coffee maker, the essentials. She said she'd keep her apartment for now, but she needed to be here. In the house where her mother lived, where she grew up, where things made sense. I took vacation days from work, used up all my saved time to be there with her. We fell into a routine. Mornings, we'd have coffee on the porch. She'd go to work at the law firm. She'd decided to keep her job, at least for now. I'd work on small projects around the house, things I'd been putting off for years. Evenings, we'd cook dinner together. Simple things, real things. One night, about 2 weeks after she'd moved in, we were making spaghetti, her mother's recipe, when she said, I called off the wedding. I stopped stirring the sauce. You did? Officially. This morning, I gave Brandon his ring back. How did he take it? He cried. I cried. She chopped an onion with more force than necessary. It was awful, but it was right. You're sure? No, but I'm sure I can't marry someone when I don't even know who I am yet. That's not fair to either of us. I turned down the heat on the stove and pulled her into a hug. She held on to me like she used to when she was little and thunderstorms scared her. I'm proud of you, I said, for ruining my engagement, for being brave enough to admit you're not ready. That takes guts. She pulled back and wiped her eyes. His mother sent me a text. Patricia? Yeah. Want to hear it? Sure. She pulled out her phone and read, Camille, I'm disappointed, but I understand. Perhaps this is all for the best. You need time to find yourself, and Brandon needs a partner who knows who she is. I hope you both find what you're looking for, even if it's not with each other. Regards, Patricia. Regards, I repeated. That's cold. It's honest. She never really liked me anyway. I was always a project to her, something to mold into acceptable wife material for her son. Did Brandon disagree with calling it off? No. He actually agreed with me. He said we should both take time to figure out what we really want. He's going to do some traveling, some thinking. Maybe we'll find our way back to each other. Maybe we won't. How do you feel about that? She stirred the pasta, thinking. Relieved, sad, terrified, hopeful, all of it at once. That sounds about right. We ate dinner mostly in silence, but it was comfortable silence. The kind you can only share with people who really know you. After dinner, she said, Tell me about Mom. What about her? Everything. I feel like I'm forgetting her, and it scares me. I want to remember. So I told her about how we met at that church barbecue, how Denise had sauce on her face and didn't care, how she laughed at my terrible jokes, about our first date at a diner where the waitress spilled coffee on me and Denise insisted on paying for my meal as an apology, even though it wasn't her fault, about the day Camille was born and how Denise had held her and said we made a person, a whole entire person. Camille cried, but they were good tears. She was beautiful, I said, inside and out, and you look just like her. I don't feel like her. She struggled too, baby. She had moments where she didn't know who she was or what she wanted. She just hid it better than you do. Really? Really. When she found out she was pregnant, she had a full-blown crisis. She wasn't sure she was ready to be a mother. She was scared she'd mess you up, that she wasn't maternal enough, that she'd fail somehow. I never knew that. She didn't talk about it much, but yeah, she was terrified. Then you were born, and she fell in love with you so hard it scared me a little. You became her whole world. What would she think of me now? After everything I did? I thought carefully about how to answer. She'd be disappointed you lied. But she'd be proud you told the truth. She'd be sad about the wedding, but she'd be happy you had the courage to call it off. Your mother loved you unconditionally, Camille, just like I do. That doesn't mean she'd approve of everything you did. It means she'd love you anyway. Camille went to bed early that night. I stayed up looking at old photo albums I hadn't opened in years. Denise and me at our wedding, young and stupid and so in love it hurt. Denise pregnant, glowing, one hand on her belly. Denise holding baby Camille, exhausted and euphoric. Denise at Camille's kindergarten graduation, crying happy tears. Denise sick, thin, frail, but still smiling for the camera because she didn't want Camille's memories to all be sad ones. The last photo was from 3 days before she died. All three of us in her hospital bed, crowded together, me and Camille on either side of her. We're all smiling, but the sadness in our eyes is unmistakable. I remembered what Denise said to me that night after Camille went home. Jeffrey, promise me something. Anything. Don't let her forget who she is. Don't let the world make her small or ashamed or fake. She's perfect exactly as she is. Make sure she knows that. I'd tried. God knows I tried. But somewhere along the way I'd failed. Or maybe I hadn't. Maybe Camille had to lose herself to find herself. Maybe this whole disaster, the lies, the wedding, the locked gates, all of it, maybe it was necessary for her to become who she was supposed to be. I closed the album and went to bed. The next few weeks were healing time. Camille started seeing a therapist. She cut way back on her spending. She started coming to church with me again, something she hadn't done in years. I watched her slowly come back to life, like a plant that had been dying and finally got water and sun. One Saturday morning, she came downstairs with an envelope. "What's this?" I asked. Open it. Inside was a check for $14,500, the amount she'd cost me with the chairs and other wedding expenses. "Camille, I got a second job, waitressing on weekends at that seafood place by the lake. I've been saving every penny. This is what I owe you." "Baby, you don't owe me. I do. Not for the money, for everything. For lying, for being ashamed of you, for all of it. I can't change what I did, but I can try to make it right." I looked at that check and I wanted to tear it up, but I knew she needed this. She needed to make amends the only way she knew how. "Thank you," I said. "There's more." "What do you mean?" "I talked to Gloria, your property manager, the Riverside property. I want to help you finish it. Not hire someone, Daddy. Me. I want to work on it with you. Learn what you know. Spend time building something together." I felt my eyes get wet. "You sure? It's hard work." "I'm sure." "Teach me, Daddy. Teach me everything Mom didn't get to teach me. Everything you know about building and fixing and making something from nothing." So we did. Every Saturday for the next 3 months, we worked on that property together. I taught her how to replace old boards, how to paint properly, how to read levels and measure twice and cut once. She got paint in her hair and splinters in her fingers and blisters on her palms. And she never complained once. She wasn't good at it, not at first, but she learned. She tried. She showed up. That was enough. 4 months after the wedding, that wasn't. I got a call that changed everything. A developer from Atlanta had heard about the Riverside property, wanted to see it, maybe make an offer. I almost said no. I wasn't ready to sell yet, especially not now that Camille and I were working on it together. But Camille convinced me to at least hear them out. The developer was a woman named Rachel Chen. She showed up in a Range Rover, power suit, the works. But when she stepped out and saw the property, her whole demeanor changed. "This is incredible," she said, walking through the courtyard. "The stonework, the fountain, the view. Mr. Watson, this is exactly what I've been looking for." "For what?" "I run a nonprofit that creates event spaces for low-income families. Weddings, reunions, celebrations they couldn't otherwise afford. We rent the spaces at cost, just enough to cover maintenance. This property would be perfect." I looked at Camille. She looked at me. "How much?" I asked. $650,000, and I'd name it after you, the Watson estate." That number hit me hard. That was retirement money, security, everything I'd worked for. "Can I think about it?" Of course, take a week. After Rachel left, Camille and I sat on the courtyard wall, looking at the lake. You should sell it, she said. I don't know. Daddy, think about it. All those families who can't afford expensive venues getting to celebrate here, getting to have their perfect day in this beautiful place you built, that's worth more than money. But it's your inheritance. I don't need an inheritance. I need you healthy and happy and not working yourself to death. Take the money, retire, travel, live. What about you? I'm figuring it out. I got a promotion at work. I'm saving money. I'm living below my means for the first time in my life, and it feels good. I don't need your property. I need you. I thought about it for a long time. That night I called Rachel and accepted the offer. The closing was 6 weeks later. As I signed the papers, I felt equal parts relief and sadness. This property had been my dream, my security, my plan. But it had also become the site of my biggest failure as a father. Maybe letting it go was the right thing. With the money, I did something I hadn't done in 40 years. I retired, gave my notice at the construction company, trained my replacement, and on my last day, my crew threw me a party at a bar where we used to go after work. Marcus raised a toast to Jeffrey Watson, the best damn foreman I ever knew, the hardest worker, the best friend, and a man who taught us all that your word and your work are the only things that matter. I cried in front of 30 construction workers who all pretended not to notice. After retirement, I struggled for a bit, didn't know what to do with myself. Camille came home one day and found me just sitting on the porch at 2 in the afternoon, staring at nothing. You need a project, she said. I had a project. I sold it. Then find a new one. That's when I started volunteering. Habitat for Humanity, church construction projects, helping neighbors fix things around their houses. Turned out retirement didn't mean not working. It meant choosing the work that mattered. Camille kept living with me. She'd kept her apartment but never went back. Said she liked being home, liked having dinner with me every night, liked the person she was becoming in this house full of memories. She and Brandon talked occasionally. They'd see each other at work events, be polite, even friendly, but they both knew they'd made the right choice. One Sunday after church, 6 months after the wedding, Patricia Prescott approached us. Mr. Watson, Camille, Mrs. Prescott. She looked uncomfortable, which was new for her. I wanted to tell you both something. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, about my role in it. I talked to my therapist. Yes, even people like me have therapists, and I've realized I have a significant problem with classism. I was too shocked to respond. I judge people based on their economic status. I always have. I was raised that way. But that's not an excuse. It's a failing, and I'm sorry, particularly to you, Mr. Watson. You're a good man who raised a wonderful daughter, and I treated you as less than because of your profession. That was wrong. Thank you for saying that, I said. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I'm working on it. I've started volunteering at a community center, actually doing work instead of just writing checks. It's eye-opening. Camille spoke up. How's Brandon? He's well. He's dating someone new, a public defender. Smart, kind, doesn't care about his last name. I think you'd like her. I'm glad he's happy. He still asks about you. Tell him I'm good, really good. After Patricia left, Camille linked her arm through mine. Did that really just happen? I think it did. Wonders never cease. We walked to my truck and I realized something. I was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. For the first time since Denise died, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. My daughter was home. My conscience was clear. My work was done. 1 year after the wedding that wasn't, the Watson estate opened to its first event. A quinceañera for a girl named Maria, whose family had saved for years, but still couldn't afford a traditional venue. Rachel Chin invited us to attend, and I surprised myself by saying yes. Camille and I drove to the Riverside property together. The gates were open, beautiful and welcoming. The courtyard had been enhanced, new lighting, restored gardens, upgraded sound system, but it was still recognizably the place I'd built. Maria's family was setting up decorations, and everyone was smiling and laughing. The joy was so pure it made my chest ache. Mr. Watson! Rachel saw us and rushed over. I'm so glad you came. Come see what we've done. She walked us through the improvements, and I felt proud. The work was good, quality. They'd honored what I built while making it better. We have 47 events booked for the next year, Rachel said. Weddings, anniversaries, graduations. Families who never thought they could afford something like this. You made that possible. I didn't trust myself to speak, so I just nodded. Maria's father approached us, a man about my age with working hands like mine. Are you Mr. Watson? I am. I want to shake your hand. My daughter is going to have her dream party because of this place. Because of you. Thank you. His gratitude was so genuine, so heartfelt, that I felt tears in my eyes. After he walked away, Camille put her arm around my waist. Mom would be so proud of you. You think so? I know so. We stayed for the whole quinceañera, watched Maria dance with her father, watched her family celebrate, watched people make memories in a place that had almost been destroyed by bitterness and pride. On the drive home, Camille said, Daddy, I need to tell you something. What's that? I've been seeing someone. My heart did a little jump. Yeah? Who? His name is Michael. He's a teacher. Elementary school. We met at a volunteer event 3 months ago. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to make sure it was real first, that I wasn't pretending to be someone I'm not. And I'm not, Daddy. With him, I'm just me, and he likes me anyway. When do I get to meet him? Next Sunday? I could bring him to church, then we could all have lunch? I'd like that. She smiled, that real smile I remembered from before everything went wrong. He knows everything, about the wedding, the lies, all of it. I told him on our second date because I needed him to know who I really am from the start. And he said everyone has a chapter in their life they'd rather skip. He's more interested in the chapter I'm writing now. Smart man. I think so. We drove in silence for a while. Then I said, Baby, I need to tell you something too. What? I'm sorry for locking those gates, for choosing revenge over forgiveness, for making your pain worse when you were already hurting. Daddy, let me finish. You were wrong to take me off that list, but I was wrong too. I could have handled it better. I could have been the bigger person. Instead, I hurt you back, and I'm sorry. She was crying. We were both wrong, and we're both sorry. Can that be enough? It's more than enough. We pulled into my driveway, our driveway now, really, and sat in the truck for a moment, not ready to go inside yet. Do you think about it? She asked. The wedding? Sometimes. Do you regret it? I thought carefully. I regret the pain. I don't regret the outcome. We wouldn't be here, wouldn't have what we have now if things had gone differently. That's a very diplomatic answer. It's an honest one. She laughed and wiped her eyes. Come on, old man. Let's go inside. I'll make us some dinner. You cooking now? I'm trying. Don't expect miracles. We went inside and I watched my daughter move around the kitchen that had been her mother's. She was humming, something she used to do when she was little, and I realized she was happy, really, truly happy. Not the fake happiness of designer clothes and expensive brunches and pretending to be someone she wasn't. Real happiness. The kind that comes from knowing who you are and being okay with it. That night, after Camille went to bed, I sat on the porch with a glass of whiskey and looked at the stars. Denise used to say you could tell someone's fortune in the stars if you look long enough. I never believed in that stuff. But tonight, looking up at that vast darkness full of light, I thought I saw something. Not the future, not fate, just possibility. The possibility that broken things can be fixed, that lost people can find their way home, that mistakes can be redeemed, that love, real love, is stronger than pride or shame or fear. I thought about Jeffrey Watson, the man I was a year ago, hurt, angry, alone, so focused on being right that he almost lost everything that mattered. And I thought about Jeffrey Watson now, retired at peace with his daughter home and his conscience clear. Both men were me. Both choices were real. I chose wrong. Then I chose right. Then I chose wrong again. And somehow we all survived it. The story I started to tell you, all those chapters ago, was about revenge. About a man who locked his daughter out of her wedding reception because she was ashamed of him. But the real story, the one that matters, is about what came after. It's about a father and daughter who both hit rock bottom and had to climb back up together. It's about learning that forgiveness isn't weakness, that boundaries aren't cruelty, that you can love someone completely and still hold them accountable. It's about understanding that who you are matters more than what you have, that honest work has value, that family means showing up even when it's hard. Most of all, it's about finding peace. Not the peace that comes from everything being perfect. The peace that comes from knowing you did your best. You loved hard, you made mistakes and owned them. You hurt and healed. You fell and got back up. That's all any of us can do. I sat on that porch until past midnight, listening to the crickets and the distant sound of my daughter breathing in her sleep. And I felt grateful. Grateful for Denise, who taught me how to love unconditionally. Grateful for Camille, who taught me that sometimes love means letting go. Grateful for Marcus and Thomas and all the people who stood by me when I was at my worst. Grateful for second chances and hard lessons and the opportunity to get it right, even after getting it so wrong. If you've stayed with me this whole time listening to an old man tell his story, thank you. I hope it meant something to you. I hope you learned something from my mistakes. Because here's what I learned. Peace don't come cheap. You gotta earn it. Every day, with every choice, with every moment of choosing love over pride, forgiveness over revenge, truth over comfort. Some days you win that battle. Some days you don't. But you keep trying. You keep showing up. You keep loving the people who matter, even when they hurt you. Especially when they hurt you. Because in the end, that's all we got, each other. And the choice to love anyway. My name is Jeffrey Watson. I'm 73 years old. I worked construction for 40 years. I raised a daughter who lost her way and found it again. I locked the gates to her wedding reception because she took my name off the list. And I'd do it all again. Not because I was right, but because it led us here, to this moment, this peace, this understanding. Sometimes you gotta break before you can heal. Sometimes you gotta lose before you can find. Sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. I thought I had time to teach her all this. Turns out we had to learn it together. And you know what? That was exactly how it was supposed to be. If this story reached you wherever you are in the world, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. It matters. Your story matters. And wherever you are in your own journey, whether you're the one who locked the gates or the one standing outside them, I hope you find your way to peace. Thank you for listening.